City Council to order. Please join me in the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me now in honoring America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good evening. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Broderick. Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Dakota. Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin. Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Maureen Bowinis, who had waged a courageous battle with cancer. I would see her many times at the Lowell General Hospital Cancer Team Walk, and she was so brave and upbeat. She was a delight to know, a lady of such elegance and class. Maureen first worked in the medical records department at Lowell General Hospital. She later worked for Dr. Lincoln Pinsky as office manager. In 1966, she and her husband, Jim Bowinis, became owners of Century 21 Sega Real Estate. Maureen was a member of the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church of Lowell, Daughters of Penelope, and the Northeast Association of Realtors. Maureen is survived by her loving husband of 27 years, Jim Bowinis, a daughter, Alexandra, and their 4 sons, Gregory, Ralph, Christopher, and Adam, 8 grandchildren, and 1 great-granddaughter. She will be truly missed. We offer her, the family, our sympathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to chime in with a couple of words on Maureen Bowinis. Councilor Mercia really said it all. But for the better part of 10 years, I had the pleasure of coaching her daughter Alexandra, and I would see Maureen all the time. She was a wonderful woman. She was an incredibly supportive mother, and she waged an incredible battle with cancer. So I'd like to offer my condolences as well.
Thank you, Councilor Elliott. May we all rise now in a moment of silence in darkened chambers. Thank you. May she rest in peace. Before we get into the regular agenda this evening, it gives me great pleasure to recognize a young man from the Greater Lowell Technical High School, Edward Goodwin, who is here this evening with his mom, but also with some representatives from the Greater Lowell Technical High School, Patricia McGurk, who's the cluster chair of social studies and physical education, I believe, and Dean of Discipline, Jane Cornell. And under full disclosure, I think most of you know that Jane is my sister. But it's a pleasure for us to recognize Edward Goodwin this evening with a citation on behalf of my colleagues here in government. Citation, be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby congratulates and honors Edward Goodwin upon achieving first place at Law Day for his written and oral presentation entitled The Legacy of John Adams from Boston to Guantanamo, bestowed by the Middlesex County Juvenile Court as well as the Greater Lowell Bar Association. Edward Goodwin, who's primarily through his self-determination is involved in the office technology shop at Greater Lowell Technical High School and works as an internship in the discipline and attendance office. Edward also participates in historical reenactments at Concord and Lincoln for the Lincoln Minuteman. The entire City of Lowell commends Edward Goodwin for his hard work and wishes him all the best and continued success, given the 17th day of May 2011 by myself and my colleagues here in city government, the Mayor James L. Milanazzo. So it's my pleasure, Edward, to present you with this citation and offer you sincere congratulations. Thank you. true this is the first year the Greater Lowell Vocational School has won? Yes, congratulations again. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Martin.
If I could just offer my congratulations. I've been a judge in this essay contest, not this year, but in years past, and really the competition is quite good. And it's a very difficult decision every year for the judges. So to succeed, you know, among all the area high schools that participate is really a noble feat to achieve. So I know we all offer our congratulations, but as one who's participated in the process, I know the rigor that the students go through. So congratulations.
Great, thank you. Words well said. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Edward, and congratulations. Moving on to the agenda, first item is the minutes of the May 10th meeting for acceptance.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Under City Manager, communication, responses to council motions and requests. Do we have anyone who'd like to be heard on any issue? Hearing none, motion by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor...
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
I'm
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, last week we went through an appointment of an alternate for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and at that time I had requested that we get copies of the resumes. And I am in receipt of both of your memos on the issue, and I clearly don't agree with them because I think for a number of reasons. Number one, people that apply for a position on a board, and in large part mostly volunteers, although some do get stipends. Historically, we have always received the resumes, not only those of those that have applied, but also those that have been selected. So I understand the argument, and the memo from the solicitor is seems relative to employment practices for those individuals that are being hired, and I understand that because I think there is an issue of having a current job and wanting to apply, and we want to get good candidates, and we don't want releasing the information from an employment perspective to jeopardize their current job. So I still believe that in the interest of open government, as I mentioned, and letting people know we're looking at not only the resumes of the individual selected, but that other information is available to those that were not. And I think it's a good practice. I think it has been a good practice, and I would like to see it continue. So I don't know where we go from here, but I personally think that it's a good thing that we should do. Anybody should be able to see who's applying for a job, who was selected, and who wasn't selected.
Anyone want to be heard? I know that Councilor Caulfield had his hand up after Councilor Elliott, but did Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. 2004, under the Cox administration, Councilor Eileen Donahoe filed a motion. And I believe, Madam Solicitor, you were the solicitor during the Cox administration?
Right, for part of it.
Right. And the motion passed, and the council on a regular basis received resumes from every single person who applied for a board position and so forth. And there wasn't a problem back then. Why is there a problem now?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Sure. As I explained in the opinion, this was a matter that there were two things that had happened. First of all, we had a public records request, which is separate and apart from the counselors actually receiving resumes. That would require a different analysis. There was a public records request, and that's what I was responding to. In addition, the manager was also responding to an issue that had come up the prior week with regards to a request, an inquiry rather, of Councilor Elliott. So in the past, it was never an issue that had been formally forwarded to our office or forwarded in any way. And what I was responding to was a public records request. Again, there'd be a different analysis with respect to counselors obtaining copies of resumes. You do partake in the sort of confirmation process, but again, part of that confirmation process would be within the confines of a Plan E form of government. And the way it would work, essentially, is that the manager would make appointments, and the council would then confirm them, similar to the Ed Reform Act, where a headmaster, for example, might make appointments that then ultimately have to be confirmed by the superintendent of schools. The way the process wouldn't work is that the superintendent of schools wouldn't then look through all of the resumes and say, I'm not going to appoint this one, I like this candidate better. It would sort of undermine what the Ed Reform Act really was intended to provide.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Council Caulfield.
Under the Plan E form of government, Madam Solicitor, we don't make appointments, the manager does. We just
You
confirm them.
Confirm, correct. And
back-
what was
back-
released,
Back during the Cox administration, on a regular basis, we get 6, 7 resumes of people that applied, and the manager Cox selected one of the 7. And that's none of our business. We have to take a vote to confirm that. But if it wasn't a problem back then, why is it a problem now?
well, again, what I was responding to was a public records request, which is entirely separate and distinct from whether the council
But
was...
why aren't we getting the resumes of everyone who applies?
Well, again, there are two things at play. One is a public records request. That was denied. The reasons it was denied is that the public records laws state that anything that's part of your application process, i.e. including a resume, is not public, number one. Number two, what the public record law also recognizes, however, is that it may be that as part of that application process, particularly if you're the candidate obviously selected, that the public then would have a right to know that you're qualified for the position you hold. And so that's the balance that the public record law looks at. In this case, the resume of the candidate that was selected was in fact disclosed publicly long before there was a public records request for it, or that there was an inquiry regarding other resumes. That issue is separate and distinct from the issue that you bring up tonight, which is counselors receiving resumes. That would require a different analysis. One of the things that I think, if that's what we wanted to look at, that we would have to be cautious about is the whole relationship of a Plan E form of government, and for what purpose would you be getting these resumes? If you're getting the resumes for the purpose of actually selecting, that would be a problem under Plan E. If you're getting them for some other reason, I don't know exactly what the reason would be yet, but if you were getting them for a reason other than that, perhaps that's doable. But they're
Well-
two separate, I'm responding, in other words, to a public records request, which doesn't go to whether the council gets them. It
Madam
goes to
Solicitor,
whether
I don't agree with you. That's
That's
my,
your prerogative
that's
to not
my-
agree, that's fine. But
that's my prerogative, but what I'm
that's-
trying to say, if 6 people applied for that position, why didn't we receive 6 resumes,
Mr.
as we
Man-
have in the past? Why, what's the answer to that?
Mr. Manager?
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to the council's question, I understand Councilors Elliott and Councilor Caulfield saying that you've had it in the past. I've been city manager now for almost 5 years, and I don't think, I think I may have done that once or twice, but over those 5 years, you have not received. The reason being is that there's actually one primary reason, and that is that I think it has a chilling effect upon people being willing to serve. If they're not going to be picked, they don't necessarily want their name put out there as someone that's unqualified and subject themselves to exposure that somehow they were not picked to serve on a particular board. There may be a variety of reasons for that, but that's known to me and to the individual, not necessarily known to the public. And I understand that these aren't paid positions positions, but they are employee positions in serving on the boards. And I do think it would have an effect. Coincidentally, I've already had one person who applied for a position who was not chosen, who already contacted me today when they saw the article in the paper. They said, I do not want my resume being circulated. I understand you interviewed me or you received my resume for a position, but I don't want that out there because, you didn't pick me. And I have a fear that that's going to happen on a much larger scale. And as the solicitor indicated, if the city council was actually appointing someone, obviously you'd need to see all those. I'm not sure what purpose is served I'm not sure what purpose is served to necessarily circulate those resumes where they then could go out into the public and people's private information would be put out there, and they wouldn't be doing anything with the city. They would not be serving. They would not have that. And again, I'm not sure what purpose is served by it. But I think I did try to get the council a synopsis, trying to meet the council halfway in terms of what they're looking to get, in terms of what type of people are applying for these positions, with a report that I sent out yesterday. And that gives you some sense of the people that we're appointing and the people that we're getting for applicants. The other point I would make is that I don't necessarily, when we have an opening, when we had an opening on the Board of Appeals in Conservation, I sent out a general advertisement posting that said, if you're interested in serving on these land use boards, Planning Board, Board of Appeals, Conservation, we're accepting applications. They didn't necessarily specify one or the other. They weren't sure exactly what it entailed. There are other applications I receive, just people that are interested, coming out of some of these neighborhood groups I've been meeting with. People have come up to me and said, I'd like to serve on a board. Can I send you my resume? How do I get that resume out to you if they're not actually applying for a position? They're just saying, I want to serve. Do I put that in with every application that we submit, every appointment that I make? I understand Manager Cox was asked to provide that information. I understand Manager Cox did provide that information. I don't necessarily think it was in the best interest of the city when it was done. I understand Councilor Donahue did it with the best intentions, but I don't know if the best interests were served by that, and I think that it's important that you have the resume of the person that was appointed. As Senator Donahue now said in the paper today, you should have the resume of the person that's appointed. You shouldn't just be voting on a name. But I don't know what purpose is served by putting out all of the people that apply for different positions in the city.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, let me just say that the person that was selected, I'm very darn proud of. I'm very happy with that selection. So what I have to say now has no reflection on that whatsoever. Do I agree with the solicitor's report? Absolutely not. I'm sorry, I don't. I think the world of you, Christine. We have a right. That's what democracy is all about. I completely agree with Councilor Elliott and Councilor Caulfield when I say that when we have a position, it's not like they're going for a job. There's a different story. We're confusing the two issues, I believe. First of all, I'm not looking to know their application and their doctor and their diseases or their illnesses or whatever. I'm not looking for that. I wouldn't want anybody to know mine, and I don't want to know anybody else's. But if we're looking for a superintendent of schools or we're looking for a city manager, we don't divulge any information about the 20 applicants or the 15 applicants. When we narrow it down to 5, then we divulge that. And that's how it works. And that's how we've always done it. People do not want you to know that they applied for the city manager's job and didn't get chosen unless it's narrowed down to 5 and then we have to interview them. There's a different story when we're doing that or where someone wants to be on a board. Let me tell you the advantage of not getting chosen for a board. If someone comes forward and says, I didn't want my name divulged because they have a problem and I don't want them on the board in the first place. That's my opinion. I wanted to be a commissioner one time. I put a resume in. I was not even interviewed. Did I get mad that my name was in the paper? No, it got me so infuriated because the former city manager didn't take 5 minutes to interview me. He didn't do that because he didn't know me. Well, if he took 5 minutes, he would have known me, and I ran for the city council and became the mayor, so now he knew me, I think. So that's the story. I don't, my point is, it's called transparency. I don't care to know that you made the wrong choice or you made the right choice. I think we've got it in the past. I don't see the problem with saying these are the 10 people that applied, so take a look at who they are. I don't see the problem. They're not going for a job as the superintendent of schools or the head of the DPW or whatever. They're not doing that. It's a board. It's a position on a board. I don't think it's a big deal that someone got chosen and someone didn't. I just don't see the problem with us having that information. That's my opinion.
Councilman Danza?
Yes, just more of a statement on the issue is that, again, as the Councilor Mercer said, I just want government to be as transparent as possible. And in the case of these public boards, that the council has to vote to accept, then I think they should be known. I understand the privacy issues. So it should be put out there beforehand in their application that very likely their names will be made public as part of the process. And in a sense, because we have to know who was in the pool. We don't get to choose from the pool, but we get to approve or deny who is being appointed. And so we have that choice. We're not going to make, so we could deny an appointment, in which case the manager would have to make another choice or bring the name forward again. That's up to him. But I think it's important that, as Reagan made famous, the old Russian proverb, we trust but we verify. And I think this is just one of those cases. I trust the manager. I believe he'll make the right choice, but I'd like to be able to look at it and confirm that for myself. Thank you.
Madam Solicitor?
Just a couple of points. One, as far as my opinion, it's my opinion is a response, again, to a public records request, something totally separate. You may still disagree with it, although there is ample support, I think, in the public records laws for what I was setting forth. Secondly, with respect to the obtaining resumes from everyone who applies, one of the things, again, it's a completely separate analysis that would have to be done if that were ever the direction that the council wanted to go. And when you start talking about having to know the pool of candidates for the rejection, there is a slippery slope that a council can begin to go down where the council and not the manager begins to make the appointments. You can reject, yes, you can reject that maybe you don't think that a particular candidate and their qualifications is what a particular board needs at a time certain. But then looking through a list of applicants and deciding I'm going to reject because the council, say as a whole, ends up wanting some other candidate, that's again the slippery slope. And that's again, it's a different analysis. My opinion doesn't speak to whether the council actually could get the resumes, but rather whether the resumes of people who are not city employees should be made public. But anyway, I just wanted to make that distinction.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield, again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to belabor this issue. We've talked about it enough. And what happened or what transpired in 2004, it didn't mean a hill of beans to me. Because I honestly feel the manager has the right to bring a applicant forward and the council votes on it. But someone on the council filed a motion, passed unanimously, for the manager to present those resumes. My argument tonight, Madam Solicitor, if it was okay to do it in 2004, then it should be still okay to do it in 2011. That's my argument. And if you were the solicitor then, the law department didn't say boo in 2004, and now you're saying it can't be done. I don't want to discuss it no more. I made my point. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else on the, Councilor Elliott?
Well, I just wanted to follow up. That's what, there was a motion made. That is the policy. It was voted and was adopted, so it remains in effect, and the practice should continue. correct?
Mr. Manager? Oh, I'm sorry. Council Martin?
Well, can I get an answer from the solicitor, Mr. Mayor? 'Cause as far as I'm concerned, I'm not,
Well,
guess that was my
I'm not
question.
sure, what's the question?
the question was, the policy was adopted, and as far as I know, there's been no other vote to change that vote when it was taking place, so it should have continued, and it should continue.
It's something, again, the policy would be carried out by the manager. The manager would be free to request that the law department look at the policy. What I was looking at, again, was something separate and apart from any for any policy per se. It was I guess what you're talking about is a motion and a practice, one that hadn't been followed apparently for many years now, but from what the manager was saying, 4 or 5 years.
Well, you know,
But
I don't agree. I thought up to maybe this appointment last week or prior to that, we had been receiving resumes, and I guess we'll go through the appointments and have to go through all our paperwork, but maybe it wasn't a consistent practice, but it was being followed.
I was just basing it on what the manager had reported, that apparently the resumes hadn't been provided. But putting that aside, again, what I was responding to was not this issue, but a separate and distinct request from the newspaper for resumes of people who were not selected for positions, and the resumes are obviously part of their application process. Separate question.
Okay, well, the member responds to my request, just to give us the
memo from the
information
manager.
and to make it public. So as far as I know, if a policy is adopted, if a motion, I know it's not an ordinance, if a policy is adopted, it stays in place, and the manager is required to follow it. So I don't know how we can just say no. And again, I go back to the opinion, and these are legislative functions, they're not employment matters, and I think you even make that distinction in one of the two memos, that these individuals are being hired to perform essentially a legislative duty, a legislative function on these regulatory boards, and that's completely separate from someone being hired in a personal matter, but
Well,
I suppose we could debate this all night.
in any event.
Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, this is a solution in search of a problem. I mean, we have a 5-year record here of pretty successful appointees. I don't know that any of us can point to one appointee in the last, 5 years or so that's not been qualified to fulfill the role. So on the other hand, I don't know that it's a huge problem for the council to get the resumes and see who's in the mix. Although, as the manager says, he's approached this a little differently than it's been done in the past. Not every applicant, every posting is just for one group of people. People apply for, if you have something in the arts, I'm interested in that. If you have something in land use, I'm interested in that. If you have something, there's an immigration commission. We did get a report at one time of all the city boards and commissions, and there are more than a dozen of them, I believe. So I guess I would, and I take the solicitor's point that she wasn't asked in 2004, is I think what she's saying. The council asked for these things in 2004. The manager didn't object, and the council got them. Today, the council's asking, the manager says he thinks that's a problem. He doesn't necessarily think that's in the best interest of the city, and it may impose on the prerogatives of the manager. So I think we should get the solicitor's view on that now. We should ask, and then take it from there. If the council thinks it's important enough to request these things, the manager wants to comply or not, I guess that's up to him, but at least we could have the guidance of the solicitor whether that's appropriate. I think what she's been trying to tell us is she, wasn't a problem in 2004 because no one objected and no one requested her view on that, and I think why not get that view now?
Council Mercia?
Well, I'm firmly believing that we should take a vote as to what the policy, why should we still support the policy that's in place? I think that's what Councilor Elliott is bringing the fact up. I think we should put it on the table right now and vote it up or down.
I think what needs to happen, if you don't mind me speaking from the chair, is what Council Martin said, is that we should request the city solicitor to give us an opinion as to whether or not what was done in '04 was actually legal. We never got an opinion.
Well, how come it's illegal in other cities and towns, and it was legal in 2004, and all of a sudden it isn't? It's like, it changes. Other cities and towns can adopt it, and we can't now.
Well,
I don't get it.
Council Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think really a determination has been made whether it's legal or not.
Right.
It may be the case that it is in a confidential way to the council. But going back to the scenario of having a pool of candidates in which you can look at 5 candidates, say, that have applied for that position, or just generally, having the power then to reject the first choice. If you follow that down the line, I mean, you could potentially just reject 4 candidates, and in that way, I think you would be violating the Plan E form of government, because you're in effect making that choice. So I think that I would have to agree with the mayor that we ought to have first an opinion on whether or not this can take place, and I still don't think the question has been answered to what end. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
I think a good point has been made. We've had no bad appointments for quite some time. So I'm not sure exactly what the issue is to release the information. I think it just justifies to the public that everything is open. There are no secrets. These are the people that applied. This is the person that the manager thought was the best candidate, and everybody makes their own decision. So I'm not in favor of getting an opinion. We clearly have discussed this, and there's been a difference of opinion. It's a matter of policy, what this legislative body wants. I don't think anything is illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. I mean, there's some privacy issues when it comes to employment, hiring practices. I think that was pretty well outlined in the opinion. But when it comes to something like this, I don't think it makes any sense. I don't know what the real issue. If nothing less, we're telling the public everything is open, everything is an open book, and you and everybody else has a chance to see what we see. End of story.
Mr. Manager?
I think this needs to come to an end. And I would be, what I would propose is that moving forward, if the council so chooses that they want this, I do think it heads down a slippery slope in a number of different areas of involvement in the appointment process by the city council that does violate the Plan E form of government. I don't think this is the way that it operates in Worcester or Cambridge, which also have Plan E, but I think that moving forward, we will set up a procedure, if the council so chooses, that we will check with people as to their willingness to have their resumes made public. That will probably take away some people that might be interested in serving, unless they're guaranteed. If I'm a lawyer, and if I want to apply for a position and then I find out I'm not going to get the position, and my resume's out there, and suddenly my clients are saying that I'm not being appointed to a particular board, that could have a detrimental impact on my clients or my business. I think it is going to have an impact on the type of people that are applying. But we'll moving forward, if it's the wishes of the council that we do that, I think we should just recognize that it will probably have some type of impact on the people that we get applying for positions.
Councilor Elliott?
This is something unrelated. Mr. Manager, can we have someone on your staff go through the website on appointments and make sure they're all accurate? There's one individual that should not be on there. That his name is still listed on the website, and he passed away. Mr. Knox.
Oh, sure, certainly.
Anyone else on this issue? We're actually still under communication, and City Manager, Councilor Mendonça.
This is a different issue.
Different issue. Any action that we're taking on just this? Okay, Councilor Mendonça.
I know we've all received numerous. I'm sorry. I know we've all received numerous communications regarding nursing services to the private schools, and they want us to support a motion, but honestly, there was no motion before us regarding that, either last week or this week. But through the mayor, if I could have the manager speak to it as to what the issue is that's causing the commotion, and
We did receive a communication from
Yes,
the
we did
manager,
in
so
our
it would be
packet.
appropriate, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Manager?
Essentially, what has transpired here is that we have 10 private schools in the city that, and all of them were participated in discussions some years back regarding a state grant to provide some nursing services. Apparently, many years ago, we used to provide 2 hours for each of the schools through the city, but that goes back into the early 90s, I believe. But under this grant, a number of schools, 4 of the schools, chose not to participate because the condition of the grant, it wasn't clear specifically why they declined or didn't participate, but one of the conditions was that they would receive 10 hours of nursing services paid for by the state. And they would then be required to, over a 3-year period, work themselves up to provide an additional 15 hours of school nursing. 4 schools did not participate at all, or declined to participate, potentially because of that requirement that they then come up with the additional hours. 2 of the schools did comply. And they're getting their 10 hours paid for by the state, as well as they're providing their own 15 hours of school nursing. So they did comply. We have 4 schools, however, who took advantage of the 10 hours and then, but never met the requirements, the rules of the grant. And the state came in and cut our funding. And basically specifically cut the hours for those schools that were not in compliance with the grant. The city has, so that there be some continuity, has kept 2 hours per week in each one of those schools through the end of this year, so that there be appropriate transition. That's really it in a nutshell. The question is, moving forward, whether we continue to provide the 2 hours. If we provide it to those schools, we really should be providing it to all of the schools, not just those 4, but in fact, we should be providing it to the 2 that have, lived up to the requirements of the grant. And we should also probably be offering it to the other schools that are also here. One of the issues certainly is, as I've indicated in the memo that I sent out, is that these schools do not just have Lowell students. They also have students from Tewksbury, Drake, Chelmsford, Westford, Tingsboro, and beyond. And so there is a use of money for people that live outside the city, and use of money for private institutions, private nonprofits, which is borderline a potential violation of the anti-aid amendment of the Constitution. So that's really that's it. It's, as I say, in a nutshell. In fact, though, even with the question of the 2 hours, several of these schools that did not comply with the grant have actually asked to have an increase in their hours above the 2 to actually have 4 or 6 hours per week, which obviously all of this has a cost impact on the city could approximate $100,000 if we started doing this. And there is a question, too, of there was a grant agreement in place that was not adhered to.
yeah. Just to
Councilor
follow up.
Mendonça, then Councilor Caulfield.
So the bottom line is, this isn't the city cutting services in order to save money.
No.
This was, they didn't meet the requirements of the grant that they agreed to participate in the first place.
That's my understanding.
And then the state cut off the funds. So we were left in a situation where we would have to find new funds to cover that, or we'd have to cut the services because we no longer had the funding. And that's the question, I think, going forward, is what do we do? But obviously, in order to find funding for this, we'd have to take it from somewhere else. And we're not really saving any money as a result of this. The state is. So it's an open question, and just for people who might be listening at home, we don't have any motion before us to do one thing or another right now. If someone wants to propose such a solution in the future, then we consider it. But just so they know, we don't have anything to vote on yet. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Council Caulfield?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you said there were 10 independent private schools?
Correct.
Financially, looking at this whole scenario, if we didn't have these 10 private schools, I know there's 7 parochial schools, Catholic schools, and I know the Hellenic Academy and so forth, we'd have to build at least 3 more schools, good-sized schools. And we should be thanking them for the great education they're giving these children. And if we didn't have these independent schools, the 10 of them, our costs would drastically rise in education.
Mr. Manager?
If I may, Councilor, I understand the point. That's a point that's the 4 schools that haven't met the requirements.
I know,
have made. And
But it's a sad situation where, because they didn't meet requirements, we're cutting or severing any financial ties to them for the nursing.
Right.
And the point I'm trying to bring out is we should be thanking them for having these independent schools.
But if I may, I've heard that argument, and it's not entirely accurate, because many of, depending on obviously upon how many, but many of these students that are in these other schools, again, many of them come from outside the city, but also if they were to be divvied up amongst our total population, I don't actually think you'd have to build 3 new schools. You may not have to build anything. And in fact, we would increase the amount of state aid we receive. And the incremental cost of each one of these students is not the actual amount that we receive in state aid. So, for instance, our student cost is $13,000 per student. But to add 1 student doesn't increase our budget need by $13,000. It may not increase it at all, but it would result in additional money coming from the state. So in fact, conceivably, it could be a money, not that we're trying to do this to woo the school children back into the system, but financially, it actually could be beneficial to us if they were to come back into the school system.
Well, Mr. Manager, 10 schools with an average of 500 students per school. If only half of them came from Lowell, that's 2,500 students. To me, that's 3 elementary schools. Okay? And I don't want to belabor this issue any further either.
Anything else on the communications? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. Mr. Manager, we received an email regarding Livingston Avenue, and the individual is clearly concerned with a project that's going on or is being developed up in that particular section. I received another one today from another resident. I don't expect you to have the answer to this. I'm not even sure if you were CC'd on this or if you've seen it. It looks like it just went to the members of the city council. But if you haven't, went to the mayor as well. Are you aware of this development? The individual said that this particular woman has been trying to contact the administration, and she's been given the runaround, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's not part of my communication, but I am aware of the situation. So if the council would like, I'll be happy to address that. Essentially, it's a piece of property that's been divided up on Livingston. I will admit that it's a squeeze of a building onto a piece of property. but I disagree that anyone's received the runaround. That there have been a number of meetings with the resident explaining that, in fact, it does meet all of the requirements of zoning. There aren't any special permits here. There aren't any, there have been building permits pulled. It does meet the requirements, and it's just one of those unfortunate circumstances that we find here in the city with the zoning, the way it's structured. I know for a fact that that she has had communications with, I believe, with Mr. Bakey himself regarding this matter.
Well, those were my words, so I apologize.
No, no,
I was just reading, she said she's been trying for well over a week, and calling City Hall, transferred many times, looking for a permit. So maybe run around wasn't the right word, but can we get a report on this, or essentially stating that, you know, what has taken place or what has transpired? So I haven't met, I just got this email and then another one today, and the neighbors seem to be very upset with what's going on in this particular project. Thank you.
Anything else on the communications? Council Martin and Council Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's also a report in here about the solid waste and recycling enforcement. That you know, the overall, I think that the new trash pickup system, now been in place for 2 years, has worked pretty well, but there's not been universal compliance, and there are people who continue to not comply. And so this memo outlines a series of enforcement steps for people that are not complying, and you know, they'll get one warning, and then the trash is going to be left behind, and then there's going to be a fine. So a series of progressive steps. So, you know, this is, you know, what I feared when this was implemented, that you'd start having trash left behind, and then it becomes a problem for the other people on the street. And I raise it tonight just to bring publicity to it. I think if we're going to step up enforcement, we should be public about it. I know the vast majority of residents comply, and they deserve to have the other people comply. But we should be kind of public about, if we're really going to start increasing enforcement and get serious about, you better have the purple bags and things like that. People need to know that in advance. So again, website, LTC, or you know, whatever publicity we can bring to this effort, I think would be worthwhile.
Mr. Manager?
If I may, responding to the councilor, we are planning on doing that, and in the report that we issued, we are trying to do this in a phased process that we'll do the public information, but then during the first week, we'll just provide educational materials that we'll still pick up, but we'll actually provide some warnings that people aren't complying for their. So for future reference, they'll have that, and then we'll start adding additional information in week 3. We'll be leaving the non-compliant item behind, and then in week 5 we'll start actually fining. But we'll certainly make sure that there's enough public information going out on this as well.
Council Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to speak to that point, so I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Council Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the manager for this report on the Transitional Living Center. And looking at the report, they're changing their management styles to improve security, but this report doesn't indicate whether they're going to have a security guard on duty, does it?
I do not believe they are having a security guard on duty. They've put in other protocols.
So if there's a problem, they're going to have to call the Lowell police and wait for the police to arrive and so forth.
That's correct, like any other, right.
You know, with the problems they've had there in the past, I just behooves me that they couldn't hire a security guard during problem hours, so. Thanks for the report.
Anything else on the communication? Counselor Elliott.
I just wanted to follow up on a motion that Councilor Martin filed regarding federal cuts, and we all knew that they were coming from HUD and the CDBG program, and that's not good news. But what caught my attention more was the impact that cuts to the police department, potential cuts to a number of grants that has, I think, contributed to the impact on crime, JAG cuts, anti-crime. My question is, how does this directly affect police officers? I see a lot of it as civilian and support, but direct impact to police officers. The COPS grant, it says replacement of staff. Is that staff that's not police officers, or?
There are some police officers that are funded with some of this money, but mostly it's the civilian staff and as it says in the report, the grant funds 2 officers and civilian staff. So, it is going to affect our staffing, even if it's civilian staff and not, frontline police officers. The elimination of civilian staff, or the cutback of civilian staff, obviously has an impact it puts increased demands on our officers. So this is clearly going to have it is going to impact, like all these state and federal cuts are going to have an impact on our staffing. Now, the positive news, as you probably saw in the report that the police superintendent gave, is that, and actually was finally picked up by the Sun, was that the crime rate for the city has gone down. So the work that our police department is doing is paying off. But when we start to see these types of cuts, it is concerning that looking long range, that what type of impact that's going to have.
And I agree, and that is clearly my concern. But there's one notation that we had submitted an application for an anti-gang program. Was it the federal government just cut the program, so no sense of?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the communication? Motion by Councilor Mercia, a second by Councilor Murphy to accept the communications placed on file. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing. We have one public hearing this evening. It's an ordinance. Let me just read it. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the code of the City of Lowell with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Zoning by amending Article 1, Purpose and Authority, Section 1.7, amendment of chapter by inserting a new subsection 1.7.1 entitled Process for Petitioning Amendment to Zoning Map. Public hearing is now open for those wishing to speak in favor. For those wishing to speak in favor, hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition?
Oh, sorry.
In opposition? Public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm certainly going to support this. This involves the Mass Mills. It's been an eyesore along the entrance into Lowell. It's a major thoroughfare, and this is a vote that's going to improve those conditions, I believe. Okay, thank you.
No, I didn't think so.
What's that?
Yeah, I think you're talking about a different topic.
It's a different topic?
Correct.
I'm
Councilor
sorry.
Martin.
This is the vote that requires notice to abutters of zoning map changes,
Correct.
I think.
Zoning map
Correct?
changes, correct.
Right, okay.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes, I know Councilor Mercer and I spoke about this.
Yeah.
And it was actually a request of one of the people who came before us regarding a zoning change, that it seemed to be a hole in the requirement that we didn't have to notify people in this particular case, which is when a private person or entity wanted to change the zoning on a single parcel. So by doing this, we're requiring that that entity notify all the abutters so that they are aware
Correct.
of what's being requested and have ample opportunity to come before us, either for or against the zoning change. I was glad to support it, and I will be supporting it this evening again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor
Yes,
Mercia?
my colleague to the right is right. This stems from the people that came from the neighborhood on Chelmsford Street, where they were going to rezone it to make a little mall area of stores there. and they had concerns, and so we asked, technically, they didn't have to be notified, but this rule now will allow that to happen. I think it's only to have people informative. It's like moving in the middle of the night and opening up shop and no one around knows what's going on. I think this is what transparency is all about, and this is one little step to get there, right, Joe? All right, thank you.
Councilor Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize, I got the wrong one, but I certainly support this. I remember this one as well. I think Attorney George Elides was here, and,
Right.
yes.
Yes, thank you. Motion then by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Mercia. Roll call.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick. Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota. Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. Next item, we have one request for approval of out-of-state travel. What's the wish of the council? Move approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Roll call.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick. Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota. Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
7 yeas, 2 absent.
Next item, in City Council vote approving the 2011 re-precincting plan for the City of Lowell, whereas the federal census for the year 2010 has been completed, and whereas a result of the federal census for the year 2010, cities and towns in the Commonwealth are required to submit to the Secretary of the Commonwealth a re-precincting plan for the respective community, and whereas the City of Lowell, through the Department of Planning and Development, the Elections Office, and MIS, has formulated a re-precincting plan for the City of Lowell, which include changes to existing wards and precincts, which plan and legal description are attached hereto and marked A and B respectively. Now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the City of Lowell hereby accepts and adopts the 2011 re-precincting plan for the City of Lowell, which plan and legal description are attached hereto and marked A and B respectively. This needs to get referred to a public hearing
Yes.
by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. The hearing will be scheduled for May 31st.
Yeah.
Councilor Mendonça.
Through the mayor, if I could ask, if it's not already, could that map be put on the website so people can look at it before the public hearing?
Okay.
And secondly, if it's not too much work, could you provide the council with a list of streets that have moved from, I'm hoping it's not too long a list, from one precinct to another? And which ones that might be?
The first one, the first request I think we can do. The second one, I'm quite sure we can do, but I'll have to double check on that one.
Thank you.
It shouldn't be a big problem.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Murphy, then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as far as the proposed changes, if adopted, I guess the question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager is how will the people affected be notified if they're in a precinct that changes the polling place? I think that would be the biggest concern as far as being able to fully understand far in advance where the polling station is.
I believe we'd have to work on this, but I believe we could send people, from that particular street a mailing that tells them their new precinct.
Okay.
I believe that, I'm assuming that's been done in the past, and I would hope that we'd be able to do that again, utilizing our GIS system.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin, then Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My compliments to the people who worked on this. This really is a considerable effort here and presented in a pretty understandable way. So to everyone who spoke wants this on the website, I think it's a good piece of work and people should see it. The real one point I would make is we're required to do this as a result of the federal census. It's just not us deciding we want to change things around for the sake of change. It's actually mandated to be done every 10 years. So we're required to do this. The piece of information I would like to see is the actual list of polling places, because that really is the main practical impact on people, where your street is shifted from one precinct to another. You may have to vote at a different location. There are multiple places throughout the city where 2 precincts vote in one location, so just because you shift precincts, you may not move, but you might. And so there are a couple of bigger sections here that are impacted, so if we could just see that list at the time we have the public hearing, that would be helpful too.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
I just have a similar concern, and I'm not sure if I'm asking a question similar to Councilman Dantz or Murphy, but is there any way that we could overlay the existing maps, or the existing map, and show where the changes are? I know it probably can't be color-coded, but it might be easier for me to say, well, I used to, this is where the delineation of this line was before. This is where it is now. This is where I vote. So I don't know if it's possible or not, if it's too challenging or not, but that might be a way to be able to show people these are new lines, these are the old lines.
Well,
Councilor Mercia?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's telling us that all the wards that remain the same, the greatest changes in the downtown precincts due to the population growth, and in the vicinities of Gallagher Square and Plain Street. So that's what it's telling us.
Councilman Donson?
Actually, to Council Elliott's point, it took a little while to understand, but as Council Martin pointed out, somebody did an excellent piece of work here, and that the bold lines on the map are the existing precincts, and the color is the proposed new precincts. So, in a sense, they are both on this one map, which is excellent, I think.
Right. Okay. Councilor Martin?
I was just going to say
Okay.
that was my point in saying whoever did this did a good job, because you can see what's going, the black is the old and the color is the new.
No. Right. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of referring this to a public hearing for May 31st signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next item. In City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. Whereas the City of Lowell desires to make temporary rules regulating traffic under actual conditions for a period of 60 days, and whereas Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations authorize the City Council to make such temporary rules for a period not to exceed 60 days. Now therefore be it ordered, adjudged, and decreed by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. Effective immediately for a period of 60 days thereafter, the following temporary traffic regulations shall be implemented. Section 266-55, parking for handicapped persons, elderly drop-off zones, is hereby amended by adding the following. North Street on the north side, beginning 240 feet east of the easterly curb line of Central Street, running easterly along North Street for a distance of 20 feet. There's no objection. Second reading by title in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. What's the wish of the council? Move approval by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Martin. Roll call.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick. Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Dakota. Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
7 yeas, 2 absent.
Next item, vote in City Council order to purchase 2 replacement vehicles for the animal control officers ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, at the amount of $32,654 be transferred from dog license fees fund account number 1714 as shown on attachment A to vehicle purchases account number 04004-170-589-137 as more fully described in attachment A. Order recommended introduced by Bernard F. Flint, City Manager. Second reading by title, vote in City Council order to purchase 2 replacement vehicles for the animal control officers ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $32,654 be transferred. Questions? Move approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Any questions? Roll call.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick. Counselor Caulfield. Counselor Dakota. Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. Last item under the city manager's portion of the agenda, vote in city council order to provide overtime to prepare the cemetery grounds for Memorial Day week, Flag Day, and the balance of the fiscal year for the City of Lowell Cemetery Department. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $25,000 be transferred from Sale of Lots Fund Account Number 1723 to Overtime Account Number 049-14151-513000. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. Vote in City Council order to provide overtime to prepare the cemetery grounds for Memorial Day week, Flag Day, and the balance of the fiscal year for the City of Lowell Cemetery Department. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, the amount of $25,000 be transferred. What's the wish of the council? I'll note that Commissioner Bellegarde is here to answer any questions that
Yeah,
you may
move
have.
approval.
Move approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick. Counselor Caulfield. Counselor Dakota. Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Manager Lynch.
Mr. Mayor, on the previous vote for the supplemental appropriation for $32,654 for the DPW, that vote, just for point of clarification, that should read just one replacement vehicle, not two replacement vehicles. We were looking at doing two, but because of trying to hold down the costs, we're only moving forward with one. So,
Will we reflect that change in the minutes?
Same amount, though.
I'm sorry.
The
Councilor Mendonça?
the question is, does that change the expenditure?
no, no.
So we're paying that much for one vehicle?
One. For $16,000, you wouldn't get much of a vehicle to cart around dogs. So,
Thank
So
you.
is it a truck? Is it?
yes, it's a truck
it's-
with a cab, and it's similar to the truck that we utilize now, but it's a full truck. It's not a, as I said, it should have been. We were looking to buy two, and that number would have been $64,000 or $65,000. So we decided not to do that.
I have to say, I did think that was a good deal.
Great.
So I didn't ask
Right.
any questions. However, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Moving on to reports, the Chair recognizes Councilor Elliott, Finance Subcommittee report.
I will be brief. We met tonight at 5:30 to discuss the fiscal year 2012 budget. The city manager, just prior to this meeting, went through a presentation and essentially gave a snapshot of the current budget picture. He also provided some historical context or background as to where we were at, where we are, impact on reserves, health insurance, all of the major items in the budget that we're looking at for this fiscal year. I think the most important thing that I can highlight from the presentation was, as we move forward on fiscal year 2012 budget, is the challenge that we face, and this is from the city manager's handout, is a loss of unrestricted aid of $1.5 million. There's a loss of Mass School Business Assistant reimbursement of $1.4 million. We're anticipating a decline in local receipts of $800,000. We have a snow and ice deficit that we have been talking about for quite some time from this past year of $2.8 million. Increased health costs of $1.3 million. Wage increases from union contracts, settlements, step increases, $500,000. Expense requests, $600,000, and then other cherry sheet assessments. Pardon me. They potentially could be offset by a levy increase of $2.6 million, which is property taxes. New growth estimate, which is estimating new construction, new homes, and new businesses of $1.6 million. A decline in debt service of $1.6 million. Charter school savings, $600,000. Health insurance compromise, which is a net of $1 million. So as outlined, the total budget problem at this point is a $1.6 million deficit. I'm sure the manager would like to elaborate. He's confident that between now and the time that the budget is submitted, that gap can be closed, but more to come in the future. So, Mr. Manager, I know that was a very brief recap, but I'm sure he has more information on it.
Counselor, I think you gave a very good summary, and basically the problem that we're facing right now as we look at fiscal year 12 is that $1.6 million gap, and we have been making cuts in all of our departments for the last several years. We've eliminated about 12% of our workforce. As I pointed out in our in the subcommittee meeting, the police and fire have remained virtually the same. So that when you talk about those 120 positions, those have come from all of the other departments of the city, and really those cities' departments have been decimated. But to the credit of the department heads and the employees, the essential services are still being delivered. We've found more efficient ways of doing things, but clearly it's a squeeze to go much beyond that. Having said that, Mr. Moses and I have been meeting with department heads and going over the budget numbers, and it's our responsibility to deliver to the City Council a balanced budget, which we will do within the next couple of weeks. It's not without its challenges because of all the cuts that we've made and because of the continued lack of support from the state, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to do that and minimize the impact. As I pointed out in the presentation I made to the subcommittee, I did make a presentation that I'm going around and showing the various neighborhood groups in an effort to try to provide all of that information to the residents of the city, the taxpayers of the city, and the reaction so far has been, I would say, positive. Leaving aside these challenges that we have with the $1.6 million, the overall financial condition of the city actually improved over the last few years in terms of the reserves that we have. We've gone from negative $2.2 million at the end of fiscal year 2006 to actually having $1.8 million at the end of last fiscal year in free cash. Our reserves are up, and I think we're becoming more efficient and effective in the way that we utilize the resources we have, but more work still needs to be done.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just one question, Mr. Manager. The $1.6 million deficit, and we're going to have to tighten our belt as we have done in the past. Correct. Are there any merit raises or COLA raises in the budget for employees?
Only if they've been negotiated. A few out there, but most unions are still are in a phase now where there's not any. We have the $500 payment that came as part of the health insurance.
Oh, yeah, I know I'm talking about that. I'm talking
Right.
about,
but
last year we had employees receive a cost of living pay raise.
under their union contracts.
And a merit
yes.
pay raise. Are they getting that again this year?
At this point in time, that the budget hasn't been completed, but I would say no.
No. Thank you.
Anything else in the report? Motion by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Elliott, to accept the report as a report of progress. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Under petitions, we have one petition this evening. Rachel Headland, 390 Pawtucket Street, requests zoning amendment for 390 Pawtucket Street. Motion by Councilor Murphy, seconded by Councilor Martin, to refer to the Law Department for vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Moving on to the motion section of the agenda. The first motion this evening by Councilor Caulfield. Motion, City Council requested a moratorium be enacted restricting the placement of cell towers until such time as an ordinance has been adopted restricting the placement of said towers in the vicinity of parks, playgrounds, schools, etc. Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I attended a meeting last Wednesday, May 11th, at the Daily School. And one of the largest neighborhood meetings that I've ever attended. Councilor Dakota was there, so was Councilor Mendonça. Needless to say, 100% of those people that attended the meeting felt they were deceived and the night of January 18th, I believe that was the night we took a vote on this. I or some member of the council should have said, want to delay this until we have a meeting with that neighborhood. Two neighborhoods, Boston Road and the Wedge Street neighborhood. But we didn't do it. We should have. And Mr. Mayor, I applaud you. You did not vote for it. The sentiment at that meeting Wednesday evening, the representative of the communication business said this is probably the most boisterous and organized neighborhood meetings he's ever attended. And I wish I could have taken that vote back. And, Mr. Mayor, this is not my motion. It's the people's motion. They asked if I would bring this motion forward, and I said I would. And one of the residents said, why can't we put a moratorium on any future cell towers until we have something in place, an ordinance in place, governing the locations of those cell towers? That's the gist of the motion. And I know the town of Tewksbury has the same thing. And I know there'll probably be people saying, oh, you can't do that. It's illegal. You know what? It's time that we stood tall and did something for the people. And I can't remember one councilor or any councils or any city manager that had the utmost control. It's the people in this city that really have the control. And they certainly had my attention last Wednesday evening, and Councilor Dakota and Councilor Mendonça. I think everyone has a cell phone, and there's cell towers everywhere.
I think one just, I think it's ringing now.
I'm trying to bring forward, Mr. Mayor, is there has to be locations identified that are not into the public's, aesthetically in their view or whatever it might be. Boston Road, I understand they're going to put up a 150-foot tower. And at that meeting Wednesday night, many people said, why couldn't you put this tower up at the landfill? Well, if they did that, it would be costly. It's easier for them to put a cell tower on an existing structure. It's cheaper for them, or less expensive, to use a better terminology. But that's the motion I'm bringing forward. I want to thank Councilor Mercier for seconding the motion. And this is, I think everyone in the city is concerned about this, because there's a water tank going in Centerville that's going to be 130 feet high. Not a cell tower. So I like your comments, Mr. Mayor, in the paper that these cell towers should be set aside on commercial buildings, away from schools, parks, playgrounds, etc. That's the motion, and I hope that we can get it passed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Anyone else on the motion? Mr. Manager?
Just a question for the counselor. The moratorium, is this on the lease of property by the city? Is that what the intended? I read two versions of the motion. I just want to understand the motion. Is it to a moratorium on further leasing of property for cell towers?
A moratorium construct cell towers near a park, a playground, or a school.
But is this on public property or all property?
I would say this is both.
Okay, I think you will find a problem with that.
Well,
we can certainly put a moratorium on any further leasing.
Mr. Manager, why don't we find out?
Councilor Elliott and Councilor Mendonça.
I received the call, and maybe a number of us received the call, and individual may have even been at the meeting, but down off Industrial Ave or Hale Howard, there's an individual that wants or welcomes these cell towers. I don't know if it's in a prime location or not, but I don't want to give his name publicly, but he called me and he said, hey, I'd love to have them on my property. It's an industrial zone, so I think it makes sense, at least. If people want them, let's explore. I think he was at the meeting, I'm not sure, Counselor. But it makes sense to look at, at this location.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Mendoza?
Just to make sure, I think Councilor Caulfield made it clear at the meeting that this moratorium is going forward. If the lease is already in place, we couldn't legally break it at this point. But it is important that going forward, we understand where it would be allowable for these new cell towers to go up. I know when I voted in January, one of my rationale for voting for it was because I'd rather have that than have a freestanding cell tower go up nearby. So I thought that was the least two evils at the time. I didn't think there would be an uproar from the neighborhood at the time against this. So we have to consider that unless there's a need to serve those residents with cell service, which is questionable at this time. So that particular case is still going before, I believe, the planning board, and that's where the issue still needs to be taken up as to whether this cell service is needed or not. That'll be up to them. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And again, to me, if I had a choice between existing structure and a new freestanding tower, I'd have to go with the existing structure as a way that would be, well, more aesthetically pleasing than the alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy that Councilman Mendoza brought that forward. I did stress at the meeting that the White Street water tank and the Boston Road cell tower, that's before the Zoning Board of Appeals. This motion has nothing to do with that. It's something that we can't do because it will be a legal issue. But I think we can have the vision to look forward throughout the city to have some sort of control. And I think if we don't do something, that these cell towers are going to be spouting up everywhere. So.
Thank you. Madam Solicitor?
As far as a moratorium, we can certainly take a look at that. One of the issues that we will inevitably run into is that the Federal Telecommunications and Power Act has pretty much legislated in this area, and I'm sure foreseeing that there is oftentimes, whether it's in Lowell or any other community, a resistance for the existence of cell towers in particular neighborhoods or in schools and whatnot. The federal government stepped in and pretty much legislated in this area. We can, however, take a look at that act and see what ability there is, if any, to have a moratorium for the particular purpose of carving out areas where you can't have cell towers. I don't believe that there's anything right now that necessarily allows us to do that, but that's certainly something that we can take a look at.
Well, thank you. No, I'm sorry, let someone else speak.
Councilor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to also clarify on the motion, I think it is a request for a moratorium, but I imagine that it's the intent also to actually go forward with a draft to come up with an ordinance so that we do have in the future a better plan.
To restrict the placement, correct.
Because I think that under the federal law, you still really do have the ability to certainly provide for preferred areas of the placement of towers, and also going into a number of different restrictions that can be put in place in terms of height as well as aesthetics, the square footage of the actual facilities and that type of thing, just to get a much clearer vision of where these might be placed in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Caulfield?
Mr. Mayor, this moratorium could last a month and a half. It's up to the law department to draft an ordinance depicting where cell towers can be constructed or placed in the city. That's the gist of the moratorium, until we get an ordinance in place. Public hearing and so forth.
Right, I understand the intent of the motion, and again, we'll take a look at that and also our ability to do that.
You know, Mr. Mayor, the gentleman representing the communicating contractor, he was good, really good. And there were a few residents asking about the health issues, and he said, your microwave gives off more radiation in your kitchen than a cell tower. And the comeback to that answer was absolutely phenomenal. But the cell tower is on 24/7. And it's right in a toddler's park in the Highlands. And that's what has people concerned. And we should have followed your lead on that vote. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Council Caulfield. Motion, City Council requests the city manager explore the possibility of replicating the crosswalk markings used in the town of Dracut. Second by Councilor Mercia. Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke to the manager last Monday evening prior to the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting. And I was in the very friendly, nice town of Dracut a couple weeks ago. And what really attracted me to these crosswalks is they were painted a solid yellow. It's the same yellow, the same paint that you paint the center of the road with. And what was attractive to it wasn't the color of the paint. It was the motorists can see it 50, 60, 70 yards away. And I did talk to a Dracut official. They have 62 crosswalks. They're all painted, and there was a relatively small cost. So it's in the manager's court. I know it is. And all I'm asking, Mr. Manager, is do a few downtown to see if the people like them. And I think the motorists would certainly identify them. And it's very, very attractive, very classy. And I don't know how many crosswalks we have in the city. We must have a lot more than Dracut, but
We do.
But there's not one crosswalk in this city that I know of that's been painted.
Right.
Mr. Man-
Painted yellow.
What's that? No.
Painted. Well, we're in the process of painting them right now. There are a couple of issues here, but we will explore this. One of the issues is that I understand they look nice, but they don't actually meet the uniform manual for traffic control devices. So they are technically in violation of that. There's standards that are to be followed. But leaving that aside, just the logistical side of it, the town of Tingsboro actually painted their crosswalks yellow as well. And it's something that once you head down that road, you have to keep on doing. I was through Tingsboro the other day, and their crosswalks are not I don't want this going in the newspaper, but they're not particularly attractive because once you paint them yellow, you have to keep on painting them yellow forever until you repave the road, and because otherwise they look very bad. So it's just something to keep in mind as we look at this, is to you make this commitment forever.
Well, I just hope you consider it.
Absolutely.
And there are some crosswalks that are painted the standard white lines. They don't exist. They're not there no more. I see people on Middlesex Street looking, the car is coming down, they don't know if there's a crosswalk there, and it's dodge them. And we have to do something. And I think we just change. There's nothing wrong with change. If we just change and probably just do some downtown and get a reaction from the people, I think you're going to find out, Mr. Manager, that they're very attractive, but more importantly, they're effective. The motorists can see them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. Motion, City Council requests the auditor to report on all the costs expended to date as it relates to the new police garage on Arch Street. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you. I know Council Caulfield has filed a number of motions on this, and the auditor actually gave me the figure before I walked in. But knowing there had been some concerns and some discussions, I actually happened to be in the neighborhood last week, and so I decided to take a look, quite frankly. Nobody called me. Nobody had complained to me about the issue. I know there have been some challenges, so I wanted to see for myself. So the auditor did tell me that there's been approximately $528,000 spent to date, and I voted for this. I voted for this because I know it was a lease or the lesser expensive proposal. On the other hand, after going through the building, I'm concerned that it's not meeting our needs, and in the future it will not meet our needs. And again, nobody called me. I don't want anyone to get blamed down there. I took it upon myself. But there are some challenges down there, Mr. Manager, as I'm sure you're aware. And in retrospect, I don't know if the money that we invested initially is going to pay dividends or not, but as I meant, there's some challenges, there's some problems, quite frankly. And when I look at what has to be put into the building, I'm concerned that it's not the best fit, and it's not going to serve our future needs. So I'm sure you're aware of it. What I would like to do is, she gave me the cost. You know, what is the cost moving forward? I know Council Caulfield had raised the issue of the roof. I don't know what that cost is, or if it's even possible. I actually did go downstairs. That space doesn't seem to be usable at all whatsoever, which means the original footprint that we had is not available, or the cost to use that downstairs is a problem, and it floods. So there are so many issues. You know, there's money that needs to be set aside for either a dumbwaiter to bring stuff downstairs, or paving can be done, and paving is that place is a disaster. It needs to be paved. But my other concern is when vehicles are being dropped off, people literally have to push them by a tow truck. They have to push them into the garage. That doesn't make sense to me. So maybe we can get a complete report and we can have a discussion at a later date. But the money that we have put in and the money that potentially we have to put in, I'm not sure what the plan is. And I just had one other question, if we can find out. My understanding is that because of the size of the bays or the lack of access, that we're actually contracting work out on some of the larger vehicles. And I don't know if that's cost prohibitive or not, but just some general concerns, some observations that need to be corrected. And so, okay. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Manager?
If I could, and we will get you've already gotten the number from the auditor, but we'll get you a report. I'd be happy to give you a report in addition to the auditor's report that you've requested. The 500, how much did you say it was?
528.
528. That includes the cost of acquisition.
Right.
The $449,000. We project out that when this is all said and done, it's going to cost, about $680,000 to $700,000 to acquire it and make the necessary improvements. Conversely, the other property that some people would have liked to have seen us buy would have had a price tag of about $1.2 million. What seems a little lost continually on this issue is two things. One, it's less expensive, which I think is good for the city. The second is that legally, we're required to go with the low bid. And this is the low bid. Buying this for $449,000 and adding on to our needs versus spending $1.2 million for another building, 1.1 plus the cost that would have had to go to prepare that for us. So I think we have legal issues as well as just good, sound business principles. I know that the police department is not happy with there are some members of the police, I should say, yeah, I want to take that back. I won't say the police department, there are some members of the police department that aren't happy with the space. But it does meet our needs, not as comfortably as perhaps we'd like. Certainly the space next to the Songus was better, but we had to get out of that. I would argue that this space is better than the space that they had before they went to the Songus, when they were right over here behind the Civic Center. And it's, I think, long-term, it serves our interest to own this piece of property. The long-term, as I've said repeatedly, is that I don't see us staying at this site forever. I wouldn't see us staying at Meadowcroft forever. I think this is more central. I think it's right in an area that needs police presence. I think it's right near the Hamilton Canal area that's a better investment for us. And I think that you can't argue with the fact that it's saving us $500,000. I think that, Councilor, as I recall, that vote that we took this, you were very eloquent in explaining your vote, and that sometimes we all want a Cadillac, but we can't afford a Cadillac, and we have to live within our means, and that's what we've attempted to do here. As far as contracting out, we contract out quite a bit of work at the police department, when we were over at the Songus, when we're here, and when we're over at this facility. We do all of our body work, we do a lot of our larger scale mechanics work outside. And arguably, it's something we should probably be looking at more and more in the future, of having more and more work done by outside contractors, outside businesses here in the city that can do this work for us at a more reasonable cost. And there are some issues with some of the very large vehicles that we may not be able to get underneath if you have to jack them up there. But I would think that it's going to take many, 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 many years before the cost of sending them out would equal the $500,000 that we'd have to spend to go to the site that some people wanted us to go to, that was the high bidder on this proposal. But we'll get you a full report on that.
Again, let me just state, nobody from the police department complained to me. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I was there in my own time. But as you mentioned, I did vote for it because we can't always have the Cadillac. Right. But when I went through the building, Mr. Manager, they moved in October, and they didn't have any heat until March. Work seems to be going at a snail's pace. I went through the entire place myself. There are some safety issues, and again, this is my observation. There's some safety issues. In fact, an individual from Public Works is out on workers' comp. It's dangerous, and my point is to find out what we have spent, as in the motion, and what we will need to spend to bring that place to a point where it's operational and nobody's going to get hurt, and people are able to be efficient. I mean, one of the bays is full of tires, and they can't get the tires. They can't move them anywhere because they can't get them downstairs, and there's no garage downstairs. So, there are many issues, and I just want to know, what is it going to take to bring it into compliance? There's no sprinklers in the building, so I'm sure you're aware of all these issues. I just want to bring them forward, find out again what we've spent, and what else has to be spent. And my only concern is knowing that we had the high bid, and then we had a low bid, whether it was going to meet our needs or not. Is there any reason why we didn't go out and take another look at another bid or do another spec? Maybe there's a reason for it. That'd be helpful to know too.
Well, the reason for it was because we were already on borrowed time from the university. They required, not really the university, but the school building, the University Building Authority wanted us out of that site. We had gone out to lease space. The Meadowcroft, in fact, gave us a bid there that was going to cost a substantial sum of money. Actually, it was going to cost, just to lease the Meadowcroft building for 3 years, was going to require us to spend what it cost us to buy the property over on Arch Street. That didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So we looked into building a site on a piece of city-owned property. That became difficult to find city-owned property that we could do it. The one site that we did look at was in the floodplain, so it was going to require us to raise the site up, which would have ended up costing us roughly $1.2 million, $1.2 million. So we went out to bid again. We got the price from Arch Street as well as from Meadowcroft. We had to go with the low bid, and we're under the gun. And again, I think that I know there was the Arch Street property is of the appropriate size to meet our specifications. It does have that space downstairs that we've looked at a couple of different ways of getting in there. The most effective way of doing it is put a lift in that we did price out. We bid it out, came in higher than we wanted, but we found a new option that we're now moving forward with. We are doing the stairs. I want to be clear that the accident that occurred out there was a result of working to clear the place out in preparation of the police moving over, and it was an accident like happens every day in every organization that you have accidents. And we are working, though, to put that stairway in. There was a period of time that one of the bays did not have heat, but the other sections of the building did have heat. The priority of the police department seemed to get the sign shop up and running above all else. Other aspects of the work had to wait until the good weather. We are trying to do this with DPW employees as opposed to contracting it out. So there's a lot of items in play here, but again, I stand by the decision of complying with the bidding laws and also of making the right decision in terms of the cost. I don't know how we could justify spending $500,000 to go to another site.
I don't disagree, but if we're going to spend $500,000 to bring this facility up to a point where it's not going to meet our needs for the future, that's not a good use of money. So that's my only concern. That's the only reason why I brought forward. Again, I voted for it. I'm glad I voted for it, but I'm just raising some issues and just want to get some answers.
After the renovation is completed, there'll still be that $500,000 of savings. It won't be eating up the $500,000 to make it the same.
Okay, I'll look forward to the report.
Would you like to amend your motion, Councilor Elliott, to ask for funds expected to be spent in order to complete the work?
Yes, I should, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just total cost construction of the project.
Okay, as amended, thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't vote for it, and I'm glad I didn't vote for it. And the building on Meadowcross Street, Mr. Manager, wasn't that 1.1 million?
1.1 was the acquisition cost,
Right.
but then it's like the money that's already gone into Arch Street, a portion of it went for the move. That still would have had to have taken place at Meadowcroft. It went for fencing. There was still...
All fenced in.
No, not according to the department, the police department's needs. I have a letter from the police department indicating that they needed the fence brought all the way around the front of the building.
It is.
No, it isn't, Counselor. It goes along the side of the building in the back. It doesn't go in the front where they wanted. It also had roof work that was needed. It did not have a security system that we spent at Arch Street. That would have been spent at Meadowcroft. So the total cost when you got into Meadowcroft was about 1.2. The total cost when we're done at Arch Street will be about $700,000.
Well,
So it's a difference of $500,000.
the Arch Street building, that's what you got. You got a $449,000 building that, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Manager, is a piece of crap. And it looks that way. It looks like a building in the Bronx, New York right now. Now, the Meadowcross Street building was a turnkey operation. It was built for Iowa Toyota. Turn the key, bring the cars in, start service them right off the bat. The building on Arch Street, we bought it as is, didn't we?
We would have bought the other one as is as well, and it still needed work.
Right. Not as much as the Arch Street building.
No.
Now, my last question to you, Mr. Manager, did the administration or you, at one point in time, decide to buy the Meadowcross Street building?
No.
You,
We, at one point,
that never came into the picture?
we, at one point in time, intended to move forward with the leasing of the Meadowcraft building, but upon further consideration, we made the final decision to not lease it because it didn't make a lot of sense to spend $450,000 and at the end of 3 years have nothing.
Well, part of that vote was $450,000 for the building and another $230,000 for renovations.
That's correct.
So that's $700,000.
That's $680,000.
Well, give or take 20,000. Now, the building on Meadowcroft Street,
No, that's right. The building on Meadowcraft Street.
you didn't even, there was, I mean, no negotiation, nothing. I mean, I know you could have,
can't-
no one's selling garages like every day of the week, you know?
The bidding laws aren't set
Well,
up so you can negotiate.
After reading the letter from Lieutenant Crowley, there was no way I was gonna vote for that building.
Well, that's
And-
fine.
And you know what? The facts prove for itself.
Would my colleagues mind if I ask a quick question from the chair? The for sale sign that I see from the Lord overpass, is that the same sign that was on the Art Street building? There's a huge for sale sign, and I just wonder if it is for the Art Street building, why it's still up.
I do know that that sign, I don't know if that's in fact the sign for the Art Street property, but I do know that there's a sign stand there that we're planning on taking that, putting up some new signage there with our efforts with Little Cambodia, but we will check on that.
Yeah, I actually do think it was a sign for the Art Street building, and I just don't know. It's been a few months. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion as amended signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Council Elliott. Motion, City Council requests the city manager and the police chief evaluate the possibility of utilizing E911 reverse system to notify neighborhoods of house breaks and car breaks in their respective neighborhoods. Second by Council Martin. Council Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was an idea. I guess it wasn't as good idea as I thought it was, because I have learned since such time that the city, maybe I'm wrong, but the city does not have the capability of the reverse system. Is that correct? I thought at one time we did, and we were using it, but I may stand corrected.
The police department at one point in time did have I believe did have the reverse 911. They moved into a different system that was better able to. They felt better able to handle their needs, and it does reverse calling, but it's expensive to do that. Is the way the chief has explained it to me. So we are exploring a different system now called the Blackboard Connect system that a number of, I think that's what it's called, a number of communities utilize for a variety of reverse types of calls. So we will be looking at that.
Okay, that's good to know. It's just an idea, and I didn't want it to be used to alarm people, but last Thursday I was in the St. John Duck neighborhood, and I learned of a number of house breaks that had taken place over the last few weeks. And then on Saturday, I heard from some residents up in the Upper Highlands section saying there were 10, 12 car breaks, house breaks. So it's clear that whoever is doing this, they're coming in groups and they're picking certain neighborhoods or sections of the city. They're going in, they're getting out. So I thought, well, maybe we can give a little bit of a heads up to people in a particular neighborhood, saying keep your eyes open. We don't want to alarm you. We don't want to make you nervous or anxious. However, people in these neighborhoods, the Spark Street, Farragut, Endicott, there's a lot of elderly people, and it seems that those, I'm sure they fall prey to them. So it's just an idea. That's good news, Mr. Manager, if we're looking into that, and maybe it's just a way to warn people or give them a little bit of notice of what may be happening and to keep your eyes open. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Council Murphy. Motion, City Council requests the city manager work with the LRTA and the Youth Council to identify potential adjustments to bus service in order to increase work opportunities. Seconded by Councilor Mercier. Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was an issue that has been brought up several times at UTEC Fora, as well as in a report by the Youth Council to the Youth Issues Subcommittee, and most recently, as I understand it, to the meeting a few weeks ago for the Youth Development Collaborative. And I think it has some short and long-term implications. The first, more immediate need, I think, is for teenagers to be able to actually access work opportunities. It's been mentioned to me that although they may be able to use a bus service to get to a particular job, the schedule doesn't allow for them to actually get home because of the service doesn't run long enough if you have a young worker who is closing out a retail store, for example. This is a problem. It was mentioned in the report to Councilor Martin's motion that half the funding, federal funding for the Career Center, will be cut this year. It was mentioned in an article in the Boston Globe, actually, just this morning, that this is a group really that is seeing the highest unemployment rates, and particularly so for those in low-income families who really most need this. The price of gas being what it is, the opportunity to work is not just a kind of allowance or stipend, but a lot of times these kids are actually contributing to the family's expenses, to heating costs and rent costs and that sort of thing. So the more that we can do to support that access to opportunity, of course, the jobs have to be there, but the more that we can provide that opportunity, I think the better. The longer-term implications really center around the actual health of the community. If you're trying to bring about a culture really that sees a bus service as a regular thing for all walks of life, for all generations, I think the only way you do that is make it more accessible to the younger generation so that they can develop that habit, that it's not viewed just as a service for a certain sector of the population or certain sectors, because that will bring about actual benefits to the community, both environmental, reducing congestion and emissions, and bringing about cleaner air in this city. So I think based on both of those, I think that we ought to work with the LRTA and the Youth Council to see whether or not both maybe routes and schedules could be adjusted in a way that does encourage greater access. I understand that comes with some cost, probably, and I think that potentially if a plan for the bus shelters was followed through upon, there was talk of 10% being returned to the Regional Transit Authority based on the Manchester model, so that they may have those funds in the future to be able to make those adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you. I should note that Councilor Dakota is actually away with some representatives from the National Park Service looking at the future of the trolley system, which I think will also fit in with what you're talking about regarding public transportation. So, sorry. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion by Councilor Murphy. Motion, City Council requests the city manager expand the city fleet policy to include section on alternatively fueled vehicles. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was mentioned earlier at the subcommittee about fuel costs, and certainly they're not really a discretionary spending, but they're not entirely fixed either. And we did last year make some sort of progress towards reducing our cost in that area by adopting a fuel-efficient fleet policy. As I mentioned last year, there are other ways of meeting that goal. Among them being conservation, which was somewhat a part of that fleet policy. There was a section on reducing idling in the city, but also looking at reducing vehicle miles traveled overall, which speaks to that conservation aspect to it. Beyond that, there's of course the choice of alternative fuels, and whether it be biodiesel or electric or compressed natural gas. The sort of biggest challenge to that, I guess, is having the infrastructure in place to be able to take advantage of those technologies. But the LRTA actually does have quite a few buses that run on compressed natural gas. So that's one area that we can look at. And these all really have, again, environmental and financial benefits, better fuel efficiency, but also lower emissions. Sometimes they might come with an incremental higher cost in the purchase, but I think that we have to get towards looking really at the life cycle cost to all our equipment. We had a capital plan come before us, and I think one of the things that was shown to us was a picture of a burning vehicle that spoke to the need to update our capital equipment. Compressed natural gas is less volatile than petroleum, so there are a number of other benefits. In that presentation, it happened that the manager was in the area and was also able to have a picture taken quite conveniently, I think. So that might not be entirely affected by this policy, but I think that we ought to really look at, if not, beginning the procurement of these vehicles, beginning the process to put ourselves in a position to have that infrastructure in place should the opportunity present itself in the future, so that we do really fully meet the goals of reducing our emissions, reducing our fuel costs, and potentially maintenance costs as well. The compressed natural gas has lower overall maintenance costs, and I think that if we had that infrastructure in place, that may be achieved through future grants through the Green Communities Act, we might be able to get at that problem of persistent increases in fuel costs.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion?
I don't think so.
Trying to be polite. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. The last motion of the evening has been withdrawn. Is there anything to come before the council? Hearing none, motion to adjourn by Councilor Elliott.
I'm sorry, I just had a couple. One was, I know that there was a motion, I'm not sure the status of it, that we would start getting our packets electronically. Is that still going to happen? Was kind of looking forward to it, to to putting a laptop and trying it that way, or that's, I'm sure it's an enormous amount of pages to scan and et cetera, but,
We are still working at it.
Okay.
It will hopefully, probably be something that we'll be able to work on over the summer to get that up and
okay,
running.
that's fine. At least you have a time frame. And secondly, and I can file a motion if you want, but I just wanted to know what the status is of the policy for sex offenders at the library. We had indicated a number of weeks ago that it was going to be just a couple of weeks, so.
Again, it entails going through an enormous amount of material in between everything else that in day-to-day activities. The other thing that I also wanted to check on before releasing anything to the council is the status of the case on appeal and where the court is on that. Because at that point, that's going to be fairly determinative on the issue as a whole. Again, there are some steps that the council can take short of an outright ban, which seems to be impermissible. But it'll be interesting to see what ultimately the U.S. Court of Appeals is going to decide, and it may be an issue that ultimately gets appealed up to the Supreme Court anyway. But so I'll try to get that to you.
No disrespect, but I hope that we don't wait, and I hope we don't wait, or we're not waiting for an opinion from the U.S.
No. I just wanted to call to check on the status of where they are on that, because that's going to be fairly determinative. I mean, that will be
Okay, well, I think we should move on it.
Highest courts.
I personally think we should move on it and then, put these protections in place, and if some opinion does come down at some point in time, then we can address it, so, thank you.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, I just want to remind the viewing audience that June, July, August, and September will be on our summer schedule, the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. So I just want to, by way of reminder. Councilor Caulfield.
And yes, Mr. Mayor, Memorial Day services will be coming, and I'd like to see every elected official at those services to thank and pay respect to those who have served and to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice with their lives for this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We stand adjourned.